We do not get divorced. We were raised with parents that said, you don't even mention the word divorce.
Murder, yes, not divorce.
And that was the joke. But the truth is, we were raised with, hey, Alessis don't get divorced.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of The Family Business with the Alessis, because family is everybody's business. And today, it's me and me spousa that is here in the podcast booth, because we love just talking. Like we got a cup of coffee. We're sitting on the back patio of our house in the heat.
Yeah, that would
sweating.
Be right. Yeah.
The fan doesn't even cool us off.
No.
And we're disgusted by what's happening in the news. So we have to step away from the television.
Yep.
And we're going to go grind out what is in our heads about what, Mary? We have to hit this subject matter about
standards.
Standards.
Living life by a level of standard.
Yeah. Now, if you know me, you're going to realize pretty quick, and I think you're all pretty much aware of it if you listen to us regularly, that I'm really into principles.
Very much so.
I'm really into the standard of a certain way to live.
Right.
And your principles really will tell you what your future is going to look like. Because the only way you could prophesy your future is by operating in principles today, because those principles will put you on course to have a certain kind of future.
Right.
So I'm really big on principles. And what a lot of people seem to be saying today when it comes to standards and principles is that you've got to evolve and you got to change your principles and your standards to match what's happening in the culture and society today. Is that what you think?
I think that's a dangerous thing to do.
Why?
Because it leads to all kinds of confusion. If there's no absolutes. So let's go back to you for a minute. You are you are nothing except a principled, driven person.
Right.
Principles drive you. Right and wrong drives you. It's your personality. I think it's also innate. It's built into you, your type of personality, that there's no gray area. It's right or it's wrong. And if it's wrong, it's going to lead to more wrong. If it's right, it's setting you on a course to have a level of living that you can basically predict.
Right.
So when you don't have standards in your life and you don't have rights and wrongs and you're wishy-washy, nobody can build on you. The Bible talks about building on sand, sinking sand.
Yep.
And when you don't have standards in your life, you don't have the foundation of truth and principles and what you accept, what you won't, what is right, what is wrong, what you let in, and what you keep out. And I do think that the culture, the messaging today is, who are you to tell me? Well, it's not who are you to tell me. It's how does the universe work? What are the principles that work versus principles that do not work?
Yeah.
So standards are very, very important. And to leave everything open-ended with well, how do we know? Well, maybe it would work for this generation. Well, maybe that's just the way you did it, but maybe that's not the way we're supposed to do it. All of that is like a bunch of malarkey at the end of the day, because if you can't build on something, you can't have structure, you can't have confidence, and you can't have security.
Yeah. And that could touch every area of your life, from the way that you eat and what kind of food you put in your mouth, to the kind of marriage that you're going to have, to the kind of relationship or faith that you're going to have with God.
Right.
There are principles and standards that have to be adhered to.
Yes.
If you want certain kind of results.
Right.
So just with marriage in general, we're finding that society is a healthier society when the society embraces strong marriages.
Right. No, it's true.
If you don't, then you're going to see a breakdown in the family.
Yeah.
Now, Mary, I had a interesting experience recently. I admit you and I are living in a certain kind of cocoon in the church world. We come to this office, 80 to 90% of our time is spent around people that share our same faith. So when I had this encounter a couple weeks ago, it touched my heart. So I went to buy a vehicle. We were looking at buying another truck for the farm. And instead of buying it in Miami, I wanted to buy it in Georgia so I can drive it and it, to the farm and not have to pay to transport it up there. So I connect with this guy and he's got a nice little vehicle for sale. So I drive in to go meet him
Mm-hmm.
and I see the vehicle and I want to buy it. So he says, "Okay, come on in the house because we can sign the paperwork." On his way to the house, he said to me, and I said, "Yeah, man, your property is beautiful." He says, "Yeah, it is. It's great, but my life's kind of rocky right now. I'm going through a divorce." And I was like, "Oh man, I am so sorry." Now I hear that from people on occasion, right? And I am sorry. I hate to see people have to go
Oh
through a
yeah.
divorce. Then when I walked in the house, man, my heart sunk because the house, it was a nice house overlooking a nice pond in the backyard, beautiful. And I walked in and it was like bare
Oh
of furniture.
yeah.
She took the furniture
Right.
and he was left with the house.
Mm,
And it just looked so barren. It looked so empty. It looked so broken.
right.
The He had boxes piled up in the corner, which looked like that must have been where the office used to be. And she took the office furniture, and all he had left with was files that he had piled up. He had a rinky dinkety dining room table with like 3 chairs around it. The kitchen was bare, like the cupboards. He had glass
Doors.
doors on it. They were bare.
Yeah.
It so broke my heart for this man because I'm thinking this house used to be full,
Yeah.
not just full of furniture, but evidently full of activity,
Full
full
of
of
life.
life,
Yeah.
full of love. And now it's empty and bare.
Yeah.
It broke my heart. And the first thing that I thought was, could they have made it work?
I know. To
What could
avoid
be that
this.
bad?
Right.
So
Right.
I did ask him. I said, "Hey, man, did you screw up?" And he says, "Years and years ago, I did, but things just were never the same afterwards."
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, okay, here's something that maybe you could do. Fight for the marriage, just fight. Because the standard that we grab hold on to, or we hold on to, is a standard that says we stay married. We got married to stay
That's
married.
right.
And we fight for the standard of marriage. Because the moment divorce comes in the picture, the family unit
Yeah,
crumbles.
it does.
And the child that these two shared together will be affected by
Yes.
this divorce. It may not look like it right now because maybe we've convinced ourselves that mom and daddy are going to be happier this way. But in the long run, the child is going to suffer. And most likely, the two adults are going to suffer because
Right.
now they're going to have to live with the broken marriage. I know it's hard. And we're talking to a society that does not uphold the standard of marriage.
Right.
But we're here in this podcast booth, the family business, to say family is your business. Uphold the standard of the family. Stay together, work it out, forgive each other. You got to hold on to that
Yeah.
standard
Yeah.
of marriage.
Well, it's interesting that that was happening to you within the same week. I was talking to a friend who was struggling in their marriage. And when we were discussing it, she made the statement, "I've never, ever thought about leaving before. And yet I was thinking about it. And I realized I can't even let that thought come into my mind. I don't believe in that."
Yeah.
And that's what standards are. When you say that might be something that the world allows, or that might be something that my friend allows or my coworker allows. But for me, the standard that I hold is I get married once and for all to stay married. And yes, there are going to be times where you're tempted. And yes, there are going to be times where you wish you could. You're going to have those thoughts. But just take a minute and virtually walk through in your mind an empty house and doing what this man did that you walked through and the pain it caused you.
Mm.
And to not have that standard in your life, that it's easier to change than it is to separate.
Yeah.
It's just easier for me to change the way I'm looking at this or ask God to help me change or help him change than it is to break this up. And standards that you hold fast to. We do not get divorced. We were raised with parents that said, you don't even mention the word divorce.
Murder, yes, not divorce.
And that was the joke. But the truth is, we were raised with, hey, Alessis don't get divorced. Now, interestingly enough, my parents did, and they didn't believe in divorce. And your parents probably should have been divorced, but because they had that standard, your dad and your mom, they stayed married.
Yeah.
My parents, my mother had a standard for marriage. She was not about to get divorced. My father let it slip.
Yeah.
And that's what can happen when you don't have absolutes for your life. That's a picture of what happens. Why is that so important to be, to use a word that people don't like to use anymore, dogmatic about it?
Yeah.
I mean, this zero tolerance, this family, we don't get divorced.
Yeah.
And we fight for it.
Right. We're in a political season.
Yep.
We're not, well, actually, it's not just this season. It seems like now every day
All
is
the
a political
time.
season.
24-hour news cycle.
Used to be when a new president was in the White House, you had at least 2 years to kind of lick your wounds, and then they would fire it up. But man, they go at it 24/7, nonstop.
It's a dogfight all the time.
We're in the middle of it, and quite frankly, elections come down to the standards that people want to uphold.
That's right.
And the two political parties have defined what their standards are. And today we're living in a time where you could not see more difference in the two standards that are being established.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is nuts. It is. So we have certain standards that we believe are in place that are motivated by our faith. And when we say our faith, it's our relationship that we have with God. And that relationship is spelled out through the standards of God's word.
Yes.
Now, a lot of people look at those standards and think they're old-fashioned.
Yeah.
And you're not being progressive enough. And I'll tell you, if I look at it from just a very carnal mindset, from what's happening in the world today, I would embrace that.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're right. I mean, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. I mean, that's some nasty stuff. You're going to get jailed for that. Those old standards. So you look in the Bible and like, well, that standard doesn't apply today.
Right.
So what standards do apply today?
Right.
Which is very hard, because you could say the same thing about some of the old laws that are mentioned. I mean, if you kill your neighbor's cow, you got to go over there and you got to replace it with another cow. Now, what do? We just call insurance.
Right.
I have a car accident. I don't replace your car. I just call my insurance company and we're covered by it. Some of the standards that are from the Old Testament and so on with matters of the law that are biblical for us, we sit back and say, okay, there's room for change in our society. But when it comes to other standards, for instance, Mary, there is a standard that does say we got to love our neighbor.
Right.
There's not a lot of love going on in the world today. No. It's very easy to spew hate in the world today.
Even as a Christian.
Even as a Christian, a person that says they live by biblical standards.
Right.
That's a standard, though, that you cannot violate. You can't run around and have hate in your heart all the time towards others.
Yeah.
Whether it's hate that stems from, you don't like the race of another person, you let that hate start to spew out of you. Whether it's a political party, you let that hate start to spew out of you. I got it that they frustrate you. But the standard has to be upheld that says, wait a minute, man, I'm not going to be motivated by hate.
Right.
I'm going to be more motivated by love, which means I'm going to change the way I talk and behave.
Right.
I got to hold on to that standard, and I can't be taken off of that, because in the long run, we just know this principle. What you put out, what goes around, comes around.
Yeah.
You can't be a person that operates in hate all the time, operates with just criticism all the time without now that stuff coming back and hitting you.
Well, that's what a standard is. A standard is something that's a proven principle that when put in place can be built upon. It's a level, it's a measurement of this is our watermark, this is who we are. And as you're talking, this thought came to me. I remember years ago I watched this video called Wolves Make Rivers. And in every culture,
Cool.
any generation that comes around, they think we can do things differently than our past generation. They were whatever they were. We're going to do things differently. We're going to have a better society because we have all this wiggle room now. We're allowing for things that we would not have allowed for before that we knew worked, but let's just try this new way of life, right? So it goes back to what you just said about hatred and not loving your neighbor and not loving your enemy. You can try that, but the fruit is going to bear on the tree. That's going to be destructive for a society.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to end in civil war. We know that. How do we know that? Because we tried that in the past and it ended in civil war.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't argue with the outcomes. So Wolves Make Rivers, what's such an incredible story is that in Yosemite National Park, years ago, they drove out the wolves. They're dangerous. They're eating all the wildlife. Well, then they became obsolete. What's the word when they're
extinct?
Extinct. Okay. Well, what ended up happening was within a matter of years, there were no rivers left in Yosemite. Now, I don't know all the environmental reasons. You can watch that video and you could see. But the dangerous animal brought
balance
and supply. So what ended up happening was the very animal that maybe they were tinkering on the end of extinction because the wolves were predatory, they were dying anyway because the rivers dried up. So they brought back wolves to Yosemite, and it brought balance, and the rivers came back because all the overgrowth of the animals that ate vegetation dried up the rivers. Again, watch the YouTube video. I don't have all the concepts. I can't remember. It was years ago. But it's a powerful picture for us to understand that there is a cycle to this. There is a cause and effect to standards. And the reason we have standards, the reason we have absolutes, the reason we believe the Bible is the foundation of our politics, as it is our lives, as it is our marriage, as it is the way we raise our children, as the way we live our lives, is because it's the greatest standard bearer of all time. And it gives us the principles to live by. So if you ask us about marriage, we have a standard. It's very simple.
Yeah.
We go to God's word because it might look like, in today's society, there's a podcast, the film's just down the road. It's a very, 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 very famous, very popular podcast. Okay. Names I won't mention, but something that they say that's so disheartening because it's more of a liberal podcast is that Christianity is now a religion of hate. So our standards and our principles are the wolves.
Yeah.
We're the bad guy. But guess what? Wolves make rivers.
Yeah.
So if you keep believing that and you don't understand the power in principle and standard because you just want to save everybody. You don't want anybody to feel bad. You don't want to have absolutes because there's people that disagree. Well, the land's going to dry up.
Yeah.
You got to have standards. You've got to have principles. You can't build a society on nothing. You have to have structure. Children need structure.
Yeah.
We as a society need structure. So anyway, that's for whatever it's worth. That's what just popped into my head.
No, I think people have to, with your standards, people have to be able to trust you in life.
Yes.
They have to trust me. If I don't have certain standards in place, I don't give anybody the opportunity to really know who I am.
That's right.
All they're doing is listening to the words that I speak. And the words that I speak could be very deceptive. Because I can say one thing publicly and be something totally different privately.
Right. That's good.
But my standards ultimately tell on me.
Yeah.
Because what I do in private is going to be exposed public. Not because somebody's going to get out there and say, this is what Alessi's doing behind closed doors. No, the lifestyle is going to present a behavior.
Yeah, and an outcome.
That's
right.
I'm embracing behind closed doors. that other people will not see in the public, but
Yeah.
it will tell on me. That's what standards do.
That's right.
There's standards that you're upholding. And if they're faulty
Mm.
and you're not willing to uphold them, all because of peer pressure or the desire to want to be accepted or deception.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're not upholding those standards are going to give something out. It's going to tell on you somewhere along the line. And what we have found is that there are certain standards that just don't change. Okay. And they just don't change from generation to generation to generation. Now, styles can change, Mary.
Yeah.
From the clothes that you wear,
That's
the
right.
shoes that you wear, to the house that you
That's
paint.
it. Economy
It's a
changes.
style
That's
that
right.
changes,
Yep.
Cars
Music
are going to
changes.
change. Music's going to change. You got all these things that are changing.
Yeah.
But standards, the things, the principles that you choose to embrace to live by should not change.
No. And I think if they do, you use the word faulty. It's like trying to build your life on a fault line. You would not do that. You would want to make sure where you're building your life, you build it on solid ground.
Yeah.
Because, let me ask you a question. What do you do? What do you say to the younger generation that hasn't quite embraced yet that standards and living by standards and absolutes of, I know what I would say if I got invited to a gay wedding. I know what I would say if I found out a relative was gay. I know what I would do. I know what I would know what my response would be and how I would live that out. I know how I respond to people who have a different political bent. I know how I believe when it comes to abortion or any very difficult topic that is a social issue today, whatever that is. I know what I believe about divorce. The young person, what do you say to them when they want to throw back at you, that's for your generation. That's an old way of thinking. That worked for you guys. It actually didn't even work. Moving forward, we're embracing a new way of life.
Yeah.
What do you say to the next generation?
Well, I'm at that season of my life where I'm going to sit in this podcast chair and I'm going to tell you, whether it's here or on that platform, what the standards are.
Yeah.
Now, if you choose not to embrace them, God bless you.
Yeah.
Because I know what the outcome of not embracing those standards are going to present. So it's almost like, you know what? Go ahead, make your choices, make your decisions. I'm going to be here later.
Yeah. I'm not
when
going
you're going to
anywhere.
come back and say, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I should have listened.
Right.
Because I know, like right now, there's something that Florida, I guess, is going to be voting on. And it really comes down to, it doesn't matter how they spin it, but there's an amendment out there that they're trying to legalize marijuana in the state of Florida. All right.
Yeah.
Here's a standard that I think has to ultimately be upheld. I mean, when you look at someone was showing me accident rates, DUIs go through the roof.
I bet.
In states where marijuana is legalized. Well, I don't need a traffic study to tell me
Yes.
that smoking marijuana is going to be good for you.
That's so good.
Just because
That's
it's
right.
legal, it's a standard that I know should not be adhered to
Right.
because of the negative effects of it. You're going to get high.
Yeah.
That's all it's
You're
doing.
going to lose brain cells.
You're going to lose brain
That's
cells. It's no different than drinking. You keep getting drunk and it's legalized, but you get drunk. You shouldn't be driving. It hurts. It hurts your pocketbook.
Yeah.
You spend too much money on alcohol. You can't stop. You're addicted to it. You'll go broke.
Right.
That's all that's to it. You're spending useless money, valuable money on a useless activity if you're not controlling it. What's the difference? You're going to be doing the same thing with marijuana. Oh, it allows me to chill. It allows me to deal with my anxiety. Wait a minute.
Right.
If you're sick and you really need marijuana to calm you down because of your anxiety, maybe there's some good counseling we should really invest into.
Right.
Marijuana is never going to be the answer.
No.
So the standard right there is, I don't care how popular it is. And listen, there's guys that come to this
Or
church.
legal.
There's a guy that comes to this church that he and we hit this thing, and he is like so for it, and we go back and forth on it. It's like, are you crazy? Why open the door? You know, and the enemy aspect of this, Mary.
Yeah.
You open the door.
Yeah.
The enemy, you give him an inch, he's going to take a mile. All right. That dysfunction. You open the door a little bit.
Yes.
It's going to overwhelm you. So it could be legalized, but still, it's not a standard you should adhere to.
Right.
If it was once illegal and now they've been forced by who knows who, what powers are pushing the legalization of it. Some are saying it's because our jails are so crowded.
Yeah.
For people that are being arrested because they're smoking dope,
it's just easier to legalize it.
It's easier to legalize it. Don't put them all in prison. That's the reason for changing the standard.
Right.
That we don't hold people accountable for their behavior. And therefore, if it's illegal, no. Standards to me are set in stone. You live by them, and you're willing to take a shot and to be criticized like some will do because of my stance right there on marijuana. That's fine.
Right.
On our stance for the baby in the womb, protecting that innocent life in the womb, I got it. But it's a standard that we're going to uphold, and we will then, at the end of the day, you and I are going to be able to put our head down on our pillow at night, and we're going to feel at peace because the standards that we adhere to that are based out of God's word are going to bring a level of peace to our life that not having standards wouldn't bring.
And I would, about the issue of abortion, our standard is abortion's, it's a murder. We just don't believe in abortion under any circumstances. And my heart goes out to the many women that I know that have had abortions. And so many of them regret it. They didn't know. They went in ignorantly. If they could take it back, they would. My standard on what I believe with all my life, Roe v. Wade, abortion for as long as you need it is available for as many, think about this, as many abortions as you want to get, you can get. There's no limit. They don't say for the sake of the girl on her 4th, 5th, 10th abortion, you should probably stop having so many abortions. This is going to destroy your womb. They don't ever educate women. It's just whatever works. So if we don't hold the standard of what's dangerous to our body over the long haul, what actually happens when you have an abortion, and educate people, because we hold the standard of life in the womb, then you have a slippery slope in society. And just because it's legal means I can. Well, that's where standards come in place. Mm-hmm. You said it with marijuana. It doesn't matter. We grew up in high school, and if you smoked pot, you were a pothead, right? Well, that standard has slipped. Now it's medical. It helps you. It's good for you at the end of the day. They're showing that their research shows that it's really good for you. Okay, go knock yourself out. Yeah. But the truth is, you're going to be back with health problems. You might be back with tickets. You might be back where you've hurt somebody because you were hotboxing. Yes, I know that term because we smell it all the time on the street.
I don't.
You don't know what hotboxing is?
No, and I don't care to.
When they get in the car, they pull the windows up. You haven't smelt that on US 1? Oh my God, all the time.
No, my cigar smoke dries all that out.
See, and see, that's not my standard, but that's your standard. No, but the point is, we've all got to have standards. We have to have standards personally. We have to have standards as a nation, as a city. We have to have standards of what we accept, what we don't accept. But it definitely all begins with us. Yeah. Our personal convictions. Yeah. As to what is right and what is wrong, and whether it's legal or not, whether there's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. Our standards do not change. Yeah. We believe what we believe, what we believe, what we believe. Yeah. And those don't change.
What I find interesting, and this is the part that I wish people would grab hold of, is down the road, these standards will, if you embrace the right kind of standards, godly standards, biblical standards, they are going to give you a life that is free of regret.
The absolute best.
That's absolute where, best. And people just don't have that right now because they're in for the immediate gratification. Yeah. They're in for what works right now. I mean, babe, you could take this standard to the way people spend money.
Yeah, it's true.
just get to a place where, all right, the standard for my household is I use the credit card once or twice a week, or I use a card for gas or for the grocery store.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to use a credit card to go get coffee. I'm not going to use a credit card to go eat out at a restaurant because they have proven that when money actually leaves your hand, you feel the void of it immediately, as opposed to just putting something on credit card.
It's very true.
And if you feel the pain of cash going out of your hand enough, you'll say, wait a minute, I can't keep going out to eat all the time. Little simple standards that will help you. You know when you're going to appreciate that little standard of cash and credit? Is as time goes on and you want to buy a house, you're going to have more money in your savings account to be able to put down as a down payment.
Right.
If you go with that whole standard of this is what I'm going to use my credit card for, and this is what I won't.
Right.
Because there's some people that go out there, they have zero in savings right now because they carry such a high credit card indebtedness because they just don't have a standard of spending.
Right.
What is your standards? Moral? What's your standards that you embrace morally? What are your standards that you embrace in your family? The way you talk to each other, things that come out of your mouth. What are your standards? Hey, how about cussing? Are you the kind of person that has zero standards for the way that you speak and talk, even when you get mad? Or do you just, there are no standards and the F-bomb is fine for you and your household? Wow, let your kids keep hearing that.
Right.
And what kind of potty mouth you're going to start to raise.
Amen.
There's standards that have to be embraced, and you got to be strong enough to embrace them and protect them and then defend them.
This is a great conversation. We could talk for another hour on this alone. Because I think
we got to stop.
Well, we're over time.
Mary,
did you not see that? That was you, not
this
me.
This flew by.
It was amazing. I wanted to be said on this podcast that this was my concept.
Oh, Lord.
And I noticed that whenever I have a concept, Alan, and it's like a subject that I really want to talk about, he ends up, I mean, he's cold. He doesn't even, I don't mean your personality is cold. I mean, this concept is not yours. It's mine. But you have more to say about it than I do. Have you noticed that?
Wow. That's a great standard to set. Throw your husband under the bus like that.
I thought it was you don't even hear it right. Don't even hear it right. It was a compliment.
Since this is your concept, why don't you close us out?
Because I'm not good at that.
You're not?
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Family Business with the Alessis. Did I do it right?
You got it right.
Did I do it right? Hey, listen, let everybody know about this podcast. Share it. Put it on all your feeds. Let everybody know that you love our podcast because we just want to keep getting good content out there. Thank you again for watching or listening wherever you are. We hope it's helped. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and click on the notifications bell so you can be notified for all of our future videos. And if you loved today's topic, we have plenty more. And you can click on this link right here to watch all of our videos so you can learn why family is everybody's business.